there, Convo friends. Welcome to this little talk about generative AI and how it creates new roles, skills, and tools for content professionals like us. For those of you who don't know me, hoi hoi, my name is Maaike Groenewegen. I'm a conversation designer, a linguist, and a prompt designer. And as a conversation designer, I design conversational interfaces or interfaces that have a language as their primary interaction model. Think chatbots, voice assistants, and IVR, the thing on the phone where instead of pressing one, two, and three, you can actually ask your question in natural language. I most of the time coach conversational teams that just start out on their conversational AI journey. So they're usually building their first chatbot and they're trying to figure out what's the best way of working together. How do we put our team into the bigger organization? How do we put stuff live? How do we test all that kind of stuff? But increasingly, I also coach teams that are a bit further along the way because they are knocking at my door and saying, "Hey, Mike, listen, we've got this Gen AI now. What should we do? Should we ditch our chatbots? Where is the use case? Where is the value for us? What do we need to learn? What do we need to ditch?" And that's what I increasingly do nowadays. I consult with companies, not just chatbot teams, but companies in general, how to do generative AI in a way that makes sense. So together we explore, we find use cases, we build little prototypes, and we get some really hands-on experience in what works and especially what doesn't in a safe and responsible and transparent way. I'm also a bit of an expert in obsolete jobs because I started out as a historical phonologist, which means that I can read Beowulf in Old English. Chwet, we garden ein giardagum theot kuninga thrym gefrunon hoda adelingas ellen fremedon. But of course, that wasn't going to land me a job, right? So instead, like most of my fellow students, I ended up as a translator and a support agent with a small software company, right around the time where Trados Workbench came peeking around the corner, translated or automated translation, and people were like, "Oh, you're going to be out of a job next week." So I moved into technical writing, writing stuff that people don't read. I became a business analyst right at the time where Agile started happening and all the teams ditched their business analyst. I'm a conversation designer of chatbots that people really, really hate. And now I'm a prompt engineer. And that's, of course, the job that was killed before it had even properly started. So if I look at my career from a job title point of view, my career wasn't supposed to have happened in the first place. Yet here I am, doing what I love, using all my traditional linguist and language skills, and having a great time doing so. So, yeah, today I'm a prompt designer, and when I tell people that, this is basically how they see me. This is what they associate with being a prompt designer, working in some kind of futuristic blue hue. It's really sexy, as you can see here, and it's the job of the future, AI prompt engineer. Whereas in reality, what I do is basically sorry about that. I just tell large language models what to do, typically as part of software solutions. So you don't typically see my prompts as an end user. It involves a lot of experimentation. Sometimes it feels like throwing a plate of spaghetti against a wall, and the one little strand that sticks, that's the prompt I'll use. And it's very much about automating repetitive work. So I'm definitely not prompting dolly images or haiku or poems all day. On the contrary, it's definitely not sexy because this is what I typically use on a day: spreadsheets and flowcharts and a lot of language nerdery. So, my topics for today are a little flashback on my previous career, some examples of my role and work as a prompt designer, and how to get started yourself. So, my previous career, I was kind of cruising through my professional life. I had a wonderful time doing technical writing for Dutch air traffic control, where I wrote procedures and system manuals and training material and bulletins, what have you, all kinds of support for Dutch air traffic controllers to do their work. I did that for about 15 years and I decided to move on. And then I kind of got lost in the professional woods for a while, for about 3 years, had several jobs. I couldn't really find my bearings. And I was like, okay, is this it? Is this all? Until 2019, April, I think it was the 18th of April 2019, I ended up on a chatbot conference and I'm like, this is it. This is what I want to do. Because from that point onwards, I was like, it felt like that. I found my sweet spot. I found linguists. I found content people. I found people interested in user centered design. I carved out a little niche for myself. I started Women in Conversational, a community for women and allies who work in this field. Um, and because of COVID, because I started my own company, I left my job. I started my own company in 2019, just at the start of the lockdown. And that forced me to go online and give in to my social media addiction. And I started to get recognized internationally. I started to get asked to speak and to coach and to consult, not just in the Netherlands, but worldwide. I got asked in the US, in Dubai, of all places. And I felt I had finally found my place. And it got even better because once the lockdown was lifted, I got to travel the world and meet all these people I already knew online. And that's how my community came into being. But also, that's how a lot of friendships, proper friendships, came into being as well. And this, for me, is probably the best part. No, not probably the best part. It is the best part of my job, connecting with people and growing and sharing and having fun together. And then November 2022 happened, ChatGPT. And this is actual screenshots from my first encounter with ChatGPT. Because as a conversation designer, every new chatbot you test with a hello world of conversation design, the pizza bot. I'd like a pizza. I'm sorry, but as a text-based AI assistant, I don't have the ability to provide you with a pizza. And like, oh, that's a relief. Because the pizza bot is like it's your first bot that every conversation designer builds. It typically goes something like, hi, I'd like to order pizza. How many do you want? What size do you want? And what topics do you want? And if you can build that on your own independently and make it work, you have a good grasp of the basics of the technology that come with a traditional chatbot. So I was quite relieved. But then I did this. Okay, imagine you're a chatbot for a pizza delivery service. You can only answer questions about ordering pizza. When you get a question that fits the intent, order pizza, check whether the question contains the number of pizzas. If the number of pizzas is missing, ask how many pizzas must be ordered. This is literally the logic that I, as a traditional conversation designer, apply when I build a chatbot that's based on what we call natural language understanding, intent classification, and slot filling. So I gave it this instruction, which, by the way, is probably the first system prompt I ever designed. And then I asked it again, I'd like to order 4 pizzas. And it said, great, you've ordered 4 pizzas. What toppings would you like on your pizzas? And I'm like, wait a minute, what's happening here? I didn't mention any toppings. How do you know about toppings? And this is where I'm like, oh, something is happening here. Um, and then I'm like, I'm going to challenge this bot. I'm going to make it as difficult as possible. So I told it, put mushroom on pizza 1, ham on pizza 2, cheese and pineapple on pizza 3, and cheese and mushrooms on the 4th. This, for traditional intent classification, the method that I use for question recognition, is difficult to virtually impossible to build. You need a lot of system logic to make this work. And Chad just went, okay, you've ordered 1 pizza with mushrooms, 1 with ham, 1 pizza with cheese and pineapple, and 1 pizza with cheese and mushrooms. Thank you for your order. And I was like, oh dear. Actually, oh dear wasn't the thing I was saying out loud back then. It was a bit more of an expletive, but I all of a sudden realized that my design for something similar looks like this high level flow design, takes a system like this to map out all the different individual flavors and branches and variations. And to train my little language model, that would take me forever. And it would take me at least, I don't know, 3 weeks to design and test this complex logic multi intent question recognition if it is possible in the first place. Because back then, even advanced platforms like IBM Watson or Google Dialogflow were really struggling to do multi intent question recognition. That's why traditional chatbots are not that good at what they do. So I was like, hey, chat, am I doomed? Because here's a chatbot that's highly conversational. It knows how to talk, it understands multiple questions, it keeps the context of the conversation within one session. And that minute, I realized that if I keep doing what I'm doing right now, I'm going to be out of a job in the next 2 years. And this was not fear, this was not irrational thought, but based on what I saw there, I thought this is a very realistic scenario for me. I'm not going to be the conversation designer I am now in 2 years' time. To make sure, I also asked Grumpy, the grumpiest conversation designer out there, asking him like, "Hey, I'm a traditional pre-Gen AI conversation designer. Am I doomed?" Oh, another one of you? Well, let's just say the future's as bright as a burnt out light bulb for us traditional conversation designers. Yeah. By the way, Grumpy is now open in the open out in the out in the open. Sorry. If you want to talk to Grumpy yourself, you can scan the QR code here and it will take you to Grumpy. So I intuitively knew I had to do something. So I started studying, reading, and experimenting with ChatGPT, with Claude that was issued a bit later, Bing, we had Sydney, Venom, whatever. And also I started sharing a lot. Everything I was trying out, I just made videos, I wrote articles. And you know what's really funny? In a space with a few experts, I carved out my own niche yet again because I already knew about conversation design and language, and now I added LLMs and especially bullshit detection to my expertise. And I landed my first prompting gig not too long afterwards because there wasn't a lot out there and most of it was very technical. And I think I was one of the first out there to actually show that you can design your prompts. And when I say prompting, probably you wonder, like, okay, so are you doing this kind of stuff all day, like prompting Dutch women with gigantic wooden shoes, or are you doing all these kind of marketing kind of prompts? No, that's definitely not it. And to explain a little bit about what it is that I do, I need you to kind of to take you along a little bit into the theory of the difference between ChatGPT and large language models. Because ChatGPT is a commercial app built on top of a large language model, just like Gemini, Bing, Copilot, and Claude. And it has a front end, it has a conversational chat interface. It's a chatbot. It's also designed with a lot of guardrails, human intervention, and you'll be surprised at how little role or AI there's happening in ChatGPT. There's a lot of rule-based kind of guardrails around this large language model to make sure it's safe and it's a pleasurable experience. And it's also typically a general purpose chatbot. A large language model, on the other hand, is not an app. It's the underlying technology for Gen AI chatbots and applications. So ChatGPT has GPT-4. Claude has Anthropic, I think it's Opus 3. And these large language models, they don't have a front end. They're interface agnostic. You can use them for chatbots, but you can also use them for text classification. You can also use them for image recognition, for all kinds of predictive tasks and stuff like that. It's just a big model that you call through an API, so an application language interface. And it can be used as a basis for designing Gen AI apps and bots, and that is what I do. So when I look at prompting, I typically see two kinds of prompting. Conversational prompting, that's what you do with ChatGPT, with the commercial app, with Bard or Copilot, and it's everyday use that you and I do with ChatGPT. It's typically for personal use, and it's typically just one question, one search, one task, or just a little bit of chatting for fun, right? So it's typically quite ad hoc, so no need for reuse or consistent outputs over time. And it can be a lot of fun. Like I asked ChatGPT to give me an installation guide for my video recorder, a thing from the past, in Old English, which is even further back in the past, and it did it. Gefesnathon strengkref blede to theam fonsieru. Trikthone Megan Butuk. The power button, the Megan Butuk. But that's not what I do for a living. No, I design prompts. And by prompt design, I mean working in the back end of the application. So working with the large language model directly through what we call the playground. And there's many more parameters and configurations there. And most of all, what I do is very much designing what we call system prompts. And system prompts are the beating heart of any advanced generative AI application because they dictate the behavior, the interaction model of your entire chatbot or your entire interface, your entire front end. So, what you put here is kind of persistent throughout the entire session, the entire user session. These are, if you like, the global variables, the global behavior of what it is that you're building. So if you're building a coaching bot, or in this case, a learning goal creator for an educational publisher, then this could be your system prompt with a task, with instructions, and with some output. It allows you to build all kinds of applications. And the very best thing is, I couldn't believe my luck, it's an instruction, just like the very first one I gave to ChatGPT. And well, what do you know? Writing instructions, that's what I'm pretty good at, because that's what I did for 14 years for these guys and girls, by the way. Um, Working at Schiphol Tower, prompting humans in telling them how to do things and how to get things done. And prompting large language models is not that much different. So, some examples of what I do as a prompt designer, well, the most obvious one is optimizing prompts. Because good prompts are all about clear structure, clear wording, clear instructions, conciseness and precision, and knowing how to set your parameters and variables in your large language model. And if you look at how OpenAI defines guidelines for good prompting, you probably see some things that sound very familiar to you as a writer. And these things may sound like an incredibly open door, yeah, to us, writers. But engineers often struggle to put their ideas in natural language, and that's when they call me for assistance or coaching. I wanted a situation where the output of a certain prompt should be formatted as an email. And I had one engineer who literally coded the entire layout of what an email could look like. And I just prompted output an email and I got the same result. And he was like, huh? I didn't know you can do that. It's like, yeah, you just need to know how to ask. So my transferable skills there is like, okay, knowing how to write instructions, but also audience and user task analysis. Who is this prompt for and what problem should it solve? And to give you a little bit of an example, my client wrote a prompt and they came to me and they're like, Mike, it's not working. Take this article and create a summary for developers, shouldn't be more than 200 words. And they said, well, the result is still very long, very wordy. It's not really targeted at the intended audiences. Well, have a look at how I prompt for this. My prompt starts with a role, your Convo prompt, an expert tech writer that specializes in unlocking value from the vast amount of AI related information that comes our way. Your task is to generate two separate one pagers that each summarize the same article. The article will be provided as input. Each one pager should be tailored to a specific audience. Then we get the input. What can we use as input? A news article, a blog, or whatever. Who is my audience? Machine learning engineers. What is the tone of voice? Make sure that it's structured. The language should be informed, friendly, technical, and detailed, as it's intended for an audience with strong understanding of AI and machine learning. Don't dumb things down. The output, this is what it should look like. A title, a hyperlink, a summary, highlights, a takeaway. And this is the output. Exactly what I specified. Another thing I do is designing GenAI workflows, because one prompt is nice, but you're pretty limited in what you can do, right? But what if you can make chains of these prompts where the output of one prompt is the input for the next prompt, and then together they can form a little bit of a workflow? For instance, for a content department that needs to update their documents according to the latest changes in their source documents. So we need to retrieve these changes from the source. We need to analyze these changes for the impact on the target docs. We need to create change requests. So for our authoring team, we need to draft a detailed impact analysis for each manual or each piece of documentation that you have. And then we need to create the actual document work orders that will set the changes in motion. This is the kind of thing that I couldn't build without a developer before, but now with GenAI, I actually can make most of this on my own. So my transferable skills here are User task analysis again. What does the current workflow look like and which parts can we optimize by using AI? Content architecture. What are my smallest reusable building blocks? Component content management, because we need to kind of take care that we can update all these prompts, for instance, if your model changes. And also how to single source, write once and reuse many times, for instance, by creating a prompt library. And the final example that I'd like to give is how to create interactive documents. Because ChatGPT can talk about everything except your own information, right? If you're not part of the dataset, it won't know about you. And for that, we have a design pattern that's also known as talk to your document, which basically means that you upload a document to ChatGPT and you can talk to it in minutes. Technically, that means that we take the conversational capability of a large language model, and instead of aiming that at the entire ChatGPT dataset, we scope it down to just your information, documents, websites, etc. And what I really like is because if you do that, you can ask a question, right? But if you upload the EU AI Act, which is 270 pages, and ChatGPT starts like, "Hi, how can I help you today?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. You tell me. I just uploaded 200 plus pages, right? There must be something in there that's useful for me." So I believe that each document actually has a hidden interaction model waiting to be discovered. For instance, if your document is a style guide, don't just upload it, but write a prompt that turns that document into an interactive style guide so that you blah, 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 so that you get something like this. You're an expert in conversation design, you know everything about welcome message. When a user inputs a welcome message, check whether it adheres to the rules. So if I prompt my large language model like this, and there's a little bit more in this prompt. When the user's welcome message doesn't adhere to the rules, explain why. Now, if I input, "Hi, this is Voicey, the chatbot of VoiceFlow," that's a welcome message, and I run that through the LLM, it will give me back, "Great job, your welcome message adheres to all the rules," because it checked all the rules in the system prompt. It contains a warm welcome and introduction. It clearly states that the user is talking to a bot, blah, 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 blah. Well done. So rather than looking up information, it turns that information into an interactive checklist. And this is such big fun. And then finally, some other things that I do. I set up small experiments for my clients. I'm also the crusher of high hopes and inflated expectations. I advocate for boring old software development because if Gen AI is your hammer, that doesn't make every problem a nail. I also love unearthing the real problem that we're trying to solve here. And typically, the problem is not we don't have Gen AI yet. And I also try to be a little bit of an ethical consciousness within the team because there's still a lot of bias and a lot of things that are not so nice about Gen AI. I'm also an inclusive design advocate and a writer's advocate. And I'm the most critical Gen AI fan on the team. So, finally, how to get started yourself. My tips: start building. Just start building. Start experimenting. Don't wait for permission. Get ChatGPT on your phone. Use it responsibly, but use it. Find use cases in your own context. Start with the small ones, the low hanging fruit. Everything that you typically copy paste, you can create an AI for that. Find people in your organization who might be interested too. Start a little informal alliance. Have lunch meetings around the topic. Management is sometimes a bit slow in the uptake, which is good because that gives you the space to start a Gen AI capability bottom up. And you can really help your managers with informed decisions and, more nuanced perspectives. My tools: system design, I use Playground, OpenAI.com, and PromptNet. For workflow design, I use Kindo. For hybrid NLU LLM chatbots, so traditional chatbots that need a little bit of Gen AI, I use VoiceFlow. And the most complete LLM design studio, in my perspective, is Mind Studio at the moment. I absolutely love that platform. If you want to put things live and make them observable, Orc and Langsmith are your go-tos. And for research, perplexity.ai. I also have a course, but I think you already know about that. Final question: is AI going to take my job? On the contrary, the future is bright for those who know how to write. I made this up myself. No ChatGPT was harmed in writing this horrible piece of poetry, which nevertheless is very, very true, I feel. So if you want to learn more, follow me on LinkedIn or join Convo Club, my free community for people like us. Thanks.